In our main event of the evening, kicking off the Bellator Light Heavyweight Grand Prix, we have a fight almost 9 years in the making. The rematch between your current heavyweight champ, former light heavyweight champ, Ryan Darth Bader, and he's taking on the Dragon, Lyoto Machida. And when we get into MMA, back when we were very, very young, 2008, 2009, it was because of guys like Shogun Rua, John Jones, Chuck Liddell, GSP, and pretty much Lyoto Machida. Okay. And it's crazy to see where the sport's gone and the fact that Lyoto Machida is still competing at the age he's at. And if you look at it, coming into this fight, he's going to be 42 and 10 months old, taking on the 37-year-old, almost 38-year-old Ryan Bader. And how the careers that both of these guys have gone on in the last 9 years is absolutely insane. For Ryan Bader, he was always kind of like the bridesmaid, but never the bride with the UFC. He always got the big opportunities, and he always lost. He goes over to Bellator, and boom goes the dynamite. This guy is really something special. And really, only until recently have we seen him lose. And the fight against Vadim Nemkov is just absolutely insane. Before that, his loss was to Anthony Johnson back in 2016. He was on a tidy little win streak, plenty of finishes there. Do we like Ryan Bader fights against Phil Davis?
No, they're terrible.
No, they're terrible. But when he fought King Mo, pretty good. Finished him in 15 seconds. When he fought Fedor, finished him in 35 seconds. Ryan Bader has carved out this second half of a career that's been absolutely insane. And we look opposite him for Lyoto Machida. Did he win all the time with the UFC? No, he didn't. Was it called the Machida era or the Machida error? Well, that's a joke that our own John Franklin loves to talk about. But if you look at what he did leaving the UFC, beating Eric Anders, it was a close one, and finishing Vitor Belfort in classic fashion, since Lyoto's come over to Bellator, wins over Rafael Carvalho, the former longtime middleweight champ. That was a really close fight, and we'll get back to it. Finishing Chael Sonnen, where, he just kept setting it up and knocking him down. And then 2 split decision losses to the now champ at middleweight, Gegard Mousasi, and Phil Davis by split. It's really interesting to see how Machida's continued to really stay relevant and to put on impressive fights, and I would say competitive fights, at almost 43 years of age.
It's wild that he's still able to have split decisions with guys like Gegard Mousasi and Phil Davis, because personally, going into those fights, I still love Lyoto Machida, full disclosure. I thought he was going to get destroyed by Gegard Mousasi. He arguably won that fight. Now, I don't think he did, but if you made that argument for me, I'd probably just agree with you, because I do really like Machida, but still, he was still having close and competitive fights with Mousasi and Phil Davis, and his last fight against Phil Davis is an interesting one, because you mentioned how we hate watching Phil Davis fight Ryan Bader. Why is that? They both have very similar styles. They're both extremely wrestling heavy, and neither guy has the best stand-up in the world. So when those guys are matched up, you're not going to get an Usman/Covington war where, oh, we are really good wrestlers, but we're both really good at stand-up. You're going to get a very low-volume affair, and that's what they had. Lyoto Machida has this really good way of making fighters defensive without even throwing punches, and I always liken it to Israel Adesanya because people like to mention Adesanya's feints, and he feinted Paulo Costa into not throwing punches. Lyoto Machida was the original guy at doing that, and you watch some of his front kicks and techniques like that, some of the traditional kicks that Machida can throw, he likes to feint with his hips a lot, and even go back and watch the first fight against Ryan Bader. Now, Ryan Bader is a much different fighter than he was 9 years ago, and I think Lyoto Machida was too, but the weird thing about this fight is I thought about, okay, well, when would have been the prime for these guys to have their second fight, I guess, in Bellator? If they had fought 2 years ago when Ryan Bader was still on top of the world, still champ, I would have said, oh, well, Lyoto Machida's kind of old and Ryan Bader's still in his prime. I honestly think we're dealing with 2 older fighters at this point, and I think Ryan Bader has kind of aged himself into Machida's category, if that makes any sense. I don't look at Ryan Bader and think, wow, this guy should be the favorite to win this tournament by any means, whereas really, if just take away that Nemkov fight, I would say, okay, this is Bader's tournament to lose. So this will be an interesting fight. But the final X's and O's. For Ryan Bader, it's pretty easy. He throws a massive overhand left nowadays, and he likes his wrestling. But other than that overhand left, I like to talk about, oh, this guy has a black belt level submission. Ryan Bader's black belt Muay Thai strike, if you will, is that overhand left. We saw him catch Fedor Emelianenko with it. We saw him catch King Mo with it. He really likes that technique, and he likes starting fights with it. The problem is, when Lyoto Machida's in his southpaw stance, that shot's going to be coming over his far side shoulder, and if Machida can't see it, it's going to put him out early. The only problem is, if Bader doesn't keep his right hand up when he does throw that strike, it's going to leave him wide open to the counter shot of Lyoto Machida, a shot that he should know quite well because that's who he was able to finish Ryan Bader in their first fight. So really just oversimplify this fight. If Bader tries to blitz forward, be that with his wrestling or his striking, he is going to get knocked out. If he can be conservative with his wrestling or his striking, I think he can win this fight. But I think it's a dangerous one for Bader.
It's a really interesting one because for Ryan Bader, 8-man strong, Arizona wrestling, and that's pretty much been A, his calling card, but B, just the overall talking point. Not even just a calling card, like it's almost like a gimmick at this point. You go over to his Instagram and that's all you see is the same guys, the same training. Nothing really changes, and fight in, fight out, it's pretty much the same thing. With Machida, you might get more feints at an advanced age. You get lower output. That much is true. I mean, that's the thing that I've really kind of seen from Machida, from the Anders fight, from the fight against Belfort, so on and so forth. And since he's been in Bellator. And the weird thing is, you might think, hey, he beat Gegard Mousasi. I'm not going to have a huge argument against it. I look at the fight against Rafael Carvalho. I didn't think Machida won that fight at all. Carvalho broke his nose. I thought Carvalho won 2 of the rounds. Machida was super tentative. And then he comes out against Chael Sonnen, and he goes jump knee. And then Sonnen just does 0 to defend it the next time and the next time, and he gets finished by it. I really have a hard time with this fight, and I'm going to be totally honest and transparent because the odds are silly. Ryan Bader opened a -500 favorite. He's now -308. The odds have shifted tremendously. For Machida, open a +375, now at a +237. And if we have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt, we haven't looked at these. So
No.
This is an experience for the viewers and for us. Holy smokes. 771 of them. 86% Bader, 52% by knockout. Lyoto Machida, got to that category where Rockhold finished him. Romero finished him. Like, it started to be, Derek Brunson finished him. This is probably it for Lyoto Machida. And now he's gone out there for fight after fight after fight, and he hasn't been finished. For Bader, though, king of consistency since he came over to Bellator and as he left the UFC. And now that Nemkov fight exposed that his defense to Vadim Nemkov's kicks was not there.
Okay, this might be a bit of a hot take, but we've talked about how good the second half of Ryan Bader's career has been. Who's the best guy he beat in Bellator? Let's just be really honest, because he
Davis?
beat a big Matt Mitrione, and he barely beat Phil Davis.
You know what? It's probably the Mitrione fight because it's up a weight class from Bader, and he dominated him.
You're dealing with a fighter known for not being able to defend takedowns against one of the better wrestlers light heavyweights ever seen. I'm just saying, Ryan Bader's really never tested himself in Bellator. He had that weird fight against Czech Congo. Vadim Nemkov was a bit of an unknown coming into that fight, and a lot of people thought Ryan Bader was going to be able to beat him because Phil Davis had a decent amount of success against Nemkov. It's not like he blew the doors off him. My only hesitation is I just don't think Ryan Bader's had this magical post-UFC career, if you will. He beat Linton Vassell, who's an okay fighter, but he would not be a ranked light heavyweight in the UFC. And I think that's one of the more shallow divisions in the UFC. I think Linton Vassell's a decent grappler, but not a good enough fighter to get you over the hump. Matt Mitrione had a decent run in the UFC, but you knew what fighter you're going to get. A great athlete, but kind of green in his skill level. Fedor is older than most people who watch this, I'm assuming. He's probably older than a lot of your guys' dads. Czech Congo, that was a weird fight. Nemkov, he got beat. My only point is that I just don't know if Ryan Bader's been this completely rejuvenated fighter over Bellator. I still think he's going to go for the same kind of takedowns. I still think he's going to be vulnerable to the same kind of shots. My only difference is that I don't know if Machida has the reaction time to catch Bader like he once was able to. I still think the holes are going to be open. I still think Machida might be able to crack Bader. I just don't know if he has the power at this age to really hurt Bader like he once did.
Lyoto Machida is one of those guys, and you have to liken him to the greats that never get to show off their other talents. Anderson Silva, such a good striker. Right. How good's his ground game? Conor McGregor, such a good striker. Oh, his grappling's great. His wrestling's not that good. But I look at Machida and kind of some of the wrinkles that he's been able to add into his game. If you look over on the Instagram, and you got to kind of pick and choose a little bit, because most of it is Machida karate. You see Shinzo in there a little bit. You see Machida's father, and that's all well and good. And then you get the little posts that are here and there. And he's been training at Fusion XL with Jacare Souza. Adolfo Vieira trains there. Former enforcer in the minor leagues, Matt Scroy, is a coach there. But there's a lot of good grapplers over at that gym, and some guys that can wrestle too. And I mean, listen, Adolfo's cardio's bad and Jacare's shot at this point, but they're both guys that could wrestle into the grappling. I really find that interesting as a wrinkle where Machida's going to train with guys like that to get ready for a guy like Bader. I'm interested to see if we get grappler Machida. We probably get striking Machida. We probably get average, everyday Machida. But there's so many different talking points to the rematch where I don't think it goes similar to the first fight.
No, I agree 100%. I think Ryan Bader knocks out Lyoto Machida. I do. Here's my problem. If Ryan Bader wins this fight, it doesn't prove anything to me about his run. I need to see him fight Nemkov again. That's my problem. I think Vadim Nemkov, and I'll play my hand right now, I think he's by far the best fighter in this tournament. I really do. And I think he's got youth on his side, he's got athleticism, the counter wrestling, and his striking is very, very good. He is my favorite to win this tournament. So when I look at everyone else in the tournament, it's what can you do to prove to me that you can beat Vadim Nemkov? So if Ryan Bader does come out, and let's say goes really wrestling heavy from the beginning, takes down Lyoto Machida and elbows him on the ground like Yoel Romero did to him in the third round, then yeah, we're seeing this new aggressive Ryan Bader. But if he just goes out there, single legs Machida, takes him down for 3 rounds, and beats Lyoto Machida in a somewhat predictable way, then I still don't think Ryan Bader's going to move all that far in this tournament, and I think there's going to be other fighters out there who can beat him.
To me, a minus 308 scares me away from Ryan Bader. You see him get knocked out in his last one. Could Lyoto Machida hit him with a counter shot? Really cause him a lot of issues, switching stances as well. 100% he could. And again, Chael Sonnen with the lazy takedowns, Lyoto Machida with those crazy knees up the middle, boom, boom, and Machida's out, Bader's out. But yeah, you talk about this overall landscape, and I mean, really interesting guy kind of sliding in. You've got that Dovletsan Shimuradov fight against Beastin 25-8, Corey Anderson. Nemkov's got his hands full. There's a lot of great fights in this tournament, and I can't wait to see what happens on Friday between Bader and Machida, but I'm in agreement with you. I will ever so slightly, and it might sound silly because of the odds, but I will ever so slightly side with Bader, but I would not have this one on my card. I love the fight, though. I mean, 2 guys that have been in the sport for a very long time, UFC guys, Bellator guys, former champions in the organizations. It should be a great fight. Make sure you're checking out Bellator 256, and if you're just hanging around for the predictions, that's cool, but make sure you check out This Week in MMA. We got a lot more to talk about with Bellator 256, and as we always say, Matt, with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.